I'm gonna teach you how to better explain bus concepts to your audiences. So let's just jump straight into it. The first concept is something called frequency control, or like headway control. So there are internal rumors that service tree will be split into two services at Pasir Ris interchange. So historically, service tree was formed as a result of a merger between these two feeder bus services. They did it because it was just more efficient running one service as opposed to like two. But because of Cross Island Line extension from Pasir Ris to Punggol and Riviera, it might be more worth it to control the frequency of both sides. So there is one from Punggol to Pasir Ris, and the other one from Pasir Ris to Tampines. So obviously, this one will be the side that has higher demand. So because of that, you have to increase frequency along this sector. And this particular sector, you're gonna degrade it, but you're not gonna cut it or withdraw it in any way. And the reason is because service tree has this unique sector from Punggol Central as well as East, that one small part of East and Field. It links the entirety of these areas to the TPE bus stop, and it's the only bus service to do that. No matter what, even if you have like, a so-called better MRT alternative, you cannot take this link away because TPE bus stop is a crucial same stop transferring point to and from other bus services. No matter how many MRT lines you build, this TPE bus stop will still be crucial in maintaining links for bus transport, and only bus transport. It is separate from MRT and will never be related to it. And then you can also bring in other points such as Street 71, because Street 71, it's the only bus from Punggol that reaches Pasir Ris Street 71, and it's like a doorstep bus service. It's convenient, and you cannot afford to take away these essential links that have been there for like 20 years and more already, because Service Tree was like formed in 2002 if I'm not wrong. So yeah, because of direct doorstep links, it remains essential. That's the main point. The next concept is called covering deleted sectors after like a major route amendment or even a minor one. So, to put it simply, now this is not official, this is just like conceptually. So, from 196, after Mountbatten and Marine Parade, you send it up Still Road, and then you truncate it to Eunos Interchange. And likewise, in like as a result, 966 would keep its route until Jalan Eunos, whereby it would go to Eunos Interchange. And the main point of this is that you are using 196 to cover up 966 deleted sector. It is not a complicated concept, but you gotta be able to explain like the rationale of doing so. And one reason that you might cite is that once 197 already goes to Bedok, so there is really no point in duplicating. And even 31 also goes to Bedok as well from Marine Parade. And you can also say that 197 can be amended to Marine, Crescent, and Terrace to cover the missing links. You gotta think of like as many services as possible that are like nearby that can help you achieve the outcome that you want to achieve. I mean, this is all pretty simple. However, if you are really, really money minded and insist on, executing something a bit more drastic, okay, I'll just tell you conceptually. Not real, but just conceptually. For this one, you have Marina Center, Terminal, and you also have Lorong 1 Geylang as well, which will become Kallang ITH in the future. And then for this one, you have Tampines. You also have a few options: Shenton Way, Harbourfront, as well as Resorts World Sentosa. So I'm just gonna like do a very simple evaluation of the choices that I've put forth. So for Resorts World Sentosa, obviously you have 123 from Tiong Bahru, so you have service 10 from like the east side of Singapore. It's just connection to different areas, and it's nothing that's like too costly or complicated. Maybe the paperwork might be costly because you have to deal with RWS, Sentosa a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, it might be a good opportunity to bring in more tourists from CBD. Like from Suntec area, Esplanade, or even like within Tanjong Pagar, again conceptually. Shenton Way is the most cut cost one, but you still retain a lot of the sectors. Harbourfront is such that you still get a connection to service 188. This ensures that there is no link being broken. Even if you have to transfer like once, the links are still there. It's just not a direct link anymore. And then you also have to be able to explain why service 10 cannot just simply be cut to MCT or GL1, and why service 196 cannot simply be cut to Kampong Baru or Shenton Way, because this will kill off links, this would kill off links, and the same goes for this as well. Because minimally, you have 167 going to Cecile and 196 going to Robinson Road. And therefore, it's more worth it to send 196 to Marina Center. And for Geylang Lorong 1, that's only if you are really, really conscious about the nickel highway connections to like, let's say, 14, 16, etc. So you have to be able to explain these. And likewise for Service 10 still minimally has to touch the central business district, especially since East Coast Road and Upper East Coast Road do not have direct access to Thomson East Coast Line. And even if it had, when TEL breaks, you would still have at least a bus service to go to work. And additionally, you can also explain how Service 10 can do the following amendment, like say, mm, Sigla, Marine Terrace, Marine Parade, and Amber Road. So conceptually, if you delete off 196 sectors, you can replace it with Service 10, which also goes to CBD. Again, this one is a really simple concept as well. But in reality, this plan would have one flaw, and that's that Mountbatten, it would lose a direct bus service to like Parkway Parade. Now you can argue whether it's worth it or not, because some of these areas do not have like immediate access to like Thomson East Coast Line and again bus redundancy. Because Service 10 goes to Dunman and Old Airport. And realistically speaking, you also cannot afford to like remove too many services from Mountbatten either. So you run into another problem, which is why the 196-966 proposal might be more preferable because you're not just cutting off links anyhow. So this is kind of how you explain covering deleted sectors, like just briefly. The next concept is called missed opportunities. So in this context, this one got amended to Bedok North Depot, and this one got amended to Eunos. So when you're trying to justify why amendments like this should not have happened, you must say something along the lines of, this one is more worth it if you extended it to Bedok North Depot because you are still keeping links from like Serangoon to Bedok Reservoir, direct links, without having to squeeze on Circle Line. And not only that, you do not compromise the commuters going towards Bedok North Road, Bedok North Avenue 2, and most importantly, Bedok Interchange as well. So you have to explain it. You have to explain like why the current amendment is bad and what should have happened. And you also have to be able to explain, you know, in simple words like conceptually, you have to bring out like the key areas, Bedok Interchange, Bedok Reservoir, compromising sectors, and things like that. And it would be good if you were to explain more in detail that 22 would take Bedok North Avenue 3, just like the current service 18 to reach Bedok North Depot. So you just give like the sort of big picture first, like conceptually, and then you dive into all the smaller details. This concept is about making bus services faster or slower depending on the bus operator's needs. So Service 30 before ECP and MCE, it used to be a lot slower because it runs into, you know, Anson Road, Robinson Road, Collier Key, Fullerton Road, Esplanade Drive, Nickel Highway traffic, and Nickel Highway's traffic at that time in the 1970s and 80s, or even in the 90s, was particularly really bad. So you skip this, you amend it to ECP. I mean now it's like amended to MCE again. you amend the services like that so that they can skip the congestion, they can be faster, which is really valuable for long distance bus services. Yes, the trade off is you lose connectivity, you lose the fare box recovery rate a little bit because expressway sectors or non-stop sectors are considered like dead mileage. But so that's one of the trade-offs. But in return, people can get to their destinations when they're commuting long distances a lot faster. And then the reverse can also be true. When you find out that a bus service is losing money, you try to amend it away from the non-stop sectors. You try to induce local catchment into it. Okay, like you can talk about how the amendment within this new catchment, in this context, Punggol can be better. You can say that, oh, it would even be better if it used like Seletar Link instead of Punggol Way because Punggol Way can be really congested. You can say things like these, but the general concept is that you're making the bus service slower, but you're inducing more local demand and you are just creating more opportunities for passengers to like reach new places. That's about it. And this one is pretty much the same with 85 to Sengkang Westway. Last time it used TPE, now it uses Sengkang Westway, so it's inducing more local demand. Like this is basically what I mean by, do you want the local demand? Do you want people to reach their destinations faster? Which one is more important? Like in different contexts. So that's about it. This one talks about bus redundancy to MRT. So even if you have the respective MRT lines, sometimes buses are better. This is because 36 goes to Suntec, which is not immediately accessible via TEL. Like it's actually pretty inconvenient for you to like constantly make transfers via MRT. And then from Marine Parade to Orchard via Suntec, it might also be faster. Like if you're trying to reach a specific place and you prefer a doorstep bus service, you would take 36 because MRT, it's just like it's only convenient if your destination is like 100 or 200 meters near the MRT station, like within the radius. If it falls outside the radius, sometimes taking a direct bus might be better. And this is why for 36 you can just decrease the frequency. You don't cut the bus service. Again, it's the same concept from previously. Or even you can try to like OTA it, on time adherence. You can try to charge express fares to offset your fare recovery rate. But I don't really recommend this. But this is basically how you explain, even if some demand is being taken away, new demand might be induced because of the opening of MRT lines, unexpectedly sometimes as well. Even if you take away demand, how do you react to it? How do you explain to people that cutting buses is not always the solution? And it's the same for like 48. 48 is a way much is like a way faster alternative to train when you're going from like Marine Parade or Marine Terrace, basically that general area, or even Siglap, to Bugis and Little India as well, like Little India MRT. And in the same way, 48 can also induce demand to DTL because it is the fastest way from Marine Parade to reach Bugis, which is the very first DTL station that 48 touches, like westbound. So in general, you just have to remember the keyword induce or induced demand. You also have to be able to explain the change in travel patterns or like the demand. So in this context, I'm just gonna use a very simple example. Again, this has got nothing to do with DTL rationalization at all. I've always been saying 506 has got nothing to do with it. So you can say that with the introduction of 46 that does not charge express fares, this one is way more expensive, and the fact that even though 46 and 506 their frequencies are like kind of similar, maybe 46 is slightly better during weekdays or something, but generally you can just say that for service 46 it covers like almost the same areas as 506 from Bedok South Avenue 3 to Bedok North Avenue 3, where Bedok Reservoir MRT is located at. And even though 506 goes via, the southernmost part of North Avenue 3, whilst 46 goes via Bedok North Road, there is like very minimal difference. But conceptually, both of them serve pretty much the same purpose. And in this case, like in conclusion, 46 has managed to outclass 506 more or less completely. And people only take 506 long distances if they are going to, like, let's say, Kaki Bukit or Bukit Batok, something along those lines. And in a similar fashion, the downfall of Service 506 has already began way, way, way before DTL was even a thing. It wasn't even affected by DTL at all. 985 had a role to play, had a part to play. It was because 985's frequency was better, it wasn't like limited to OTA, it wasn't slow, and it was because it did not charge express fares. So you don't have to like overcomplicate things, you can just say things simply in this format and people will be able to understand. The next concept would be stating the importance of any particular bus service. So I would just start with 58 for example. So this 58 acts as a bus redundancy for Bishan to Lorong Chuan and then to Serangoon. And it also serves the schools near Lorong Chuan, like Nanyang Junior College, I think, as well as some international schools. They rely on 58 a lot. So the next one, you can also say Tai Seng to Ubi Avenue 3. Right now, it is the only bus service that goes into Ubi Avenue 3. And from there, it links to Kaki Bukit. So, the first one is about redundancy. And also like a little bit of school demand as well. The next one is about uniqueness of the route. So you just bring in different relevant little concepts to help you explain. And 58 is the only bus service that goes from Kaki Bukit straight up to IKEA Tampines. Via Avenue 10, it is the only bus service that covers the entire Tampines Avenue 10. And that is important because This allows you to reach Pasir Ris West really quickly. Without any MRT, it is just one straight line on a straight road, no turns, no nothing. I mean, there's one turn from Bedok Reservoir Road to Bedok North Road extension, but conceptually, it is a straight direct bus service that not only induces demand onto DTL at Kaki Bukit. From Kaki Bukit, it takes you directly to your house, like your doorstep, if you live in the Tampines Avenue 10 condos, or you live along Drive 12 or 3 at Pasir Ris West. And you have to be able to explain how good or how important, like the necessity of a bus service using concepts like these. So in short, just break down the route into different parts and you can even tie them up together in the end. The next one is also pretty simple. It's about whether you should rationalize it or not. So in this case, you should X this one. And to put it simply, you should say that the sectors of 66, the west side is already covered by 67 over here, and the east side, which is like from Little India all the way till McPherson, Bedok Reservoir and stuff, is already covered by 65. So because of this, 66 is redundant already. And 67 also has a unique like Little India, Lavender Street, Kallang Road, and the entire EWL sector up till Bedok North Avenue 3. This one, it's a unique connection that no other bus offers, and it's also, in a way, East West Line's disruption bus redundancy service. So you just explain it simply like this. I'm gonna bring in a different example. So since this one connects Boon Lay, it skips Pioneer to NTU. You can afford to rationalize this one when Jurong Region Line is up. But you cannot afford to touch this or this. And the reason being, Pioneer MRT has no Jurong Region Line access, and 199 is essential for. Okay, why am I saying at the top? Okay, so for 199, you have to say that it is a form of bus hub spoke, give the location along Jalan Bahar. You have to bring in the concept that people do take 974 and 172 in order to transfer to 199. And you also can say that there is also demand to like the small industrial estate near Jalan Bahar as well. You bring in these concepts to justify why you should not cut the route. Maybe you can adjust the frequency, but you should not cut the route. This is how you explain. I will just go over this concept very briefly because it's way more complicated and more intricate in real life. So let's say you run all your bendy buses on these services on weekdays so that you can clock more mileage. And the bendy buses are also particularly really useful on 180 to some extent and 184 to a very large extent because of all the students from Clementi to SUSS, SIM, and Neon Poly. And then on weekends, you just concentrate the entire fleet or almost the entire fleet depending on bus captain rostering to 302. So it's more of like a more chill drive kind of thing. So you gotta be able to explain in your whole reasoning why you make deployment choices such as these. Next concept, choosing between hub spoke and long distance. So Not all of these are Jurong Industrial Services by definition, but the main point is that are you really going to run long distance bus services from, like, let's say Pasir Ris all the way till Tuas? The answer is no, right? So you already have like services like 98, which is kind of long distance enough. It covers like Lakeside, Jurong East, and lets you transfer to other buses. And you have to bring in like the bus network when it comes to explaining these sorts of things. So in some cases, long distance buses are better, like in general, but in specific areas, hub spoke is actually a lot better, like when it comes to Jurong Industrial Services, because it allows you to like control your frequencies a lot better, because long distance bus services, like those really long ones, it is harder to control their frequencies. And then you can also compare it to like other towns such as Tengah, because you can argue that if your bus network is already very robust, you just need feeder buses from Tengah towards like the so-called outside world to connect to the other long distance buses, so that might work. But you can also argue that, Tengah's connections are quite abysmal. You need one to Boon Lay, Choa Chu Kang, Bukit Batok, Jurong East, Bukit Panjang, maybe one long distance to Yishun, and Punggol. Maybe I can have one conceptually like that, because one long distance bus isn't gonna hurt. And even in the case of Tuas, I might even excuse one bus service from Tuas all the way till Clementi or Harbourfront. I won't let them go any further any further beyond Clementi or Harbourfront. But conceptually, you've got to be able to weigh your options and just understand that not in every context long distance is better, and not in every context hub spoke is better. It just depends on how intricate your bus network is. But the most important thing is you gotta know your limits. It's not like really in terms of money, but in some cases it's actually okay to run loss making bus services. Not everything has to profit, but like you gotta understand that you cannot just introduce long distance service after long distance service. Do you have enough bus drivers, bus captains? Or is it good for the bus captains to drive such long distance bus services? I'm talking about those that exceed 2 hours, or are like unnecessarily windy and long as well. Windy and short, I don't really mind. I mean, I don't really like 162's current route, but I'm just saying, depending on context, you also have to know your limits. And in a similar fashion, this also goes when you're trying to compare city direct services, full day express, full day trunk, city shopper, or premium. You gotta weigh like which one is better for a specific area. You gotta understand that CDS and premiums, they are good if you have specific demand from a specific time frame, like people going to CBD, the office, or even Changi Business Park to work. And likewise for City Shopper, are there like, specific times in the day where people want to go to Orchard Road, like, Lucky Plaza, or they want to go Somerset, 313 Somerset, or they want to go Dhoby Ghaut, Suntec, Singapore Flyer, Bayfront, or even Sentosa. You just gotta like, it's like a temporal and spatial scale thing that you have to consider, and also your cost as well. And another simple yet essential concept is to extend the bus service or not. So 983, there is an M variant that got introduced a few years ago, but we're not really talking about that. We're just talking about the main 983. So 983, is meant to connect Choa Chu Kang Avenue 4, Avenue 5, as well as Avenue 1, ITE, College West. Everything is meant to like hub spoke to Bukit Panjang, be it you're taking the train or you're like changing to 190 or even 972, 920, 922, or you're changing to 67. And I think you have the answer. The answer is no, because the bus network is already comprehensive enough. And this ties into my previous point about like hub spoke and long distance. So in this context, do not make 983 a long distance service unnecessarily because it already does its job as a feeder bus. You can put bendy buses on it. That helps even more. And it's justified also because it's such a short distance route. And the longer you make the route, your justification for bendy buses go down unless you have a really specific case use, like service 154, because it serves a lot of schools in this case, and you need the fast boarding and alighting. And people don't really want to move to the upper deck, they would stay on the lower deck for a few stops. So putting DDs is not good. You should put bendy buses instead. You know, that kind of thing. And yeah, even your bus deployment, you also have to take into account when you're like extending or truncating bus services also. I know it's self-explanatory, but people often like forget about it. Adding bus, decreasing bus, even something as simple as that. And in this case, like what I mentioned just now, hub spoke versus long distance, if a bus already does its job as a hub spoke, there's really no point making it any longer without like without a good reason to extend it. And hub spoke doesn't necessarily always have to involve the MRT. It can be just transferring buses on and on and on. Obviously, you won't transfer that much, but you kind of get the concept. It's higher order transit, but higher order can also refer to like long distance trunk routes or express bus services. They are higher order as well. So keep that in mind. So the last concept, there are many ways to do it. People have varying suggestions, they have different opinions on whether to carry out plan A or plan B, and people evaluate things differently based on different concepts. But I'm just gonna give you one example of how you can make full use of your bendy buses. So there is 911 West Loop, 913 West Loop, 911 East, and 913 East. So you can just observe in real life Admiralty MRT to Woodland Circle, as well as Woodland Street 13. These are the areas that need the bendy buses a lot. Connect these. 913 West, well, you can argue that there is like 178 as an alternative, so you don't really have to run that many buses on 913 West at all. And 911 East isn't really an area whereby the bendy buses are like needed urgently or anything. So yeah. And by this, you swap 911 West and 911 West and 913 West the routes. Not only do you swap the routes, but you deploy the buses accordingly. So this new resultant service from 911 West and 913 East, put all the bendy buses, just put as many as you can on this one. This one, you can put single decker buses or whatever, it's like up to you. I wouldn't really recommend putting double deckers on feeder buses unless the roads are like kind of awkwardly shaped for bendy buses. I mean I've had a video on the way single decker, double decker bendy buses turn. It's not always like fixed. It's not always like fixed. It depends on the road shape. So basically this is kind of how you evaluate like in the case of town links and intra-towns, how do you like make an intra-town or town link bus service that makes sense? And how do you deploy buses that make sense as well? So if I were to give you something like this, you need to know what bus to deploy. So for this one, I would put single deckers. I will put single deckers. And then 903, I would put bendy buses. I would put single deckers on 904 as well. This one, you can put whatever you want on it. This one is strictly bendy buses. This one is also strictly bendy buses. Same for this one, strictly bendy buses. This one you can afford to put double deckers on it. And this one, ideally you want to put bendy buses, but if that doesn't work, you can put double deckers on this one as well. I mean, if you really have like fleet size constraints. And I drew this arrow here because in the previous slide I swapped their west loops. So this is kind of how I would do it. It's okay to disagree with me. You can have your own opinion regarding like what is the best deployment as well. It is subjective, but you just have to like observe in real life how the demand is like and from where to where the demand comes from. And don't get me wrong, it's not only restricted to SMRT areas or historically SMRT areas. I can even evaluate this. I have evaluated them before, but I would put bendy bus on 291. Not full fleet. I would have a mixture of bendy bus and single deckers. This one is single deckers because Street 22 is restricted. This one, I can have a mixed fleet of double deckers and single deckers. Likewise for this, bendy buses for 240. This one, unfortunately, there are turning restrictions for bendy buses. There are also turning restrictions for double deckers in some cases like Commonwealth Drive and Bukit Batok Street 52. Stuff like that. It's not really fixed based on the type of bus. So yeah, anyways, put single deckers and then maybe I would have some split shift double deckers as well. 243G, I would put DDs because this one there is that one sharp, really awkward turn for bendy buses to make. But 243W, I would put bendy buses. 246, you can deploy whatever you want. 249 and 251 would stick with double deckers, and then 252 would be a mixture of bendy buses and single deckers. Yeah, and single deckers. So the common misconception is that, oh, you can only do it for like SMRT estates, but Tampines has bendy bus slots, Boon Lay has bendy bus slots. It just depends on how you do it. And of course, I know Jurong Point can be designed a lot better, but ideally this is, how I would go about doing things. I know Boon Lay has restrictions, but I'm just saying ideally this is how it should be. Now for 296 and 298, both of them are still relatively new, so I don't really, want to evaluate too in depth about it. Sorry, my pronunciation's a bit off, but yeah, I don't really want to go too deep into it. But for 296, I would mostly put single deckers. Maybe you can have like one or two bendies, provided the IKEA turn is like suitable for bendy buses. I would put one or two during the peak hours, and then 298, since Tampines North also has bendy bus slots, yes, it actually has them. I would put like around one or two bendy buses full day on 298 if the demand, especially at Avenue 10, increases. This also applies to 298X. It just depends on like how you do it. And likewise, as usual, it is okay to disagree, but how I would do it is I would put single deckers on 800 plus one bendy bus, 801, and in future 801X, I would put double deckers on it because it's like end-to-end demand. This one is single deckers, bendy, 805 also bendy as well, 859 bendy as well, and the same thing goes for this. Okay, this one, a mixed fleet is possible. I would put bendies on this one. Not a lot, but just a few. This one is okay with double deckers or single deckers. And then this one has restrictions, so double deckers, I will put bendies here. This one, it doesn't really matter as well. So yeah, this is how you evaluate. Of course, I'm just skimming through these, but when you're trying to explain to your viewers, you would give your reasonings as well. I'm just running through like as a summary, and I hope you learned something from this video. Bye.